Now today, my city is in shock. Murders, shootings, and violent crime are increasing at percentages unheard of in the past.
That's Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York City, speaking at the Republican National Convention a few months back, but he was talking about the surge in crime and an unrecognizable city compared to the one he oversaw in the 90s. Well, Bill Pepitone wants to change all of that. He's the Republican mayoral candidate in New York City, and we are also joined by our panelists here, Scott Walker, Bobby Eberle. Good to see both of you back here. I'll start with you, Bill. Thanks so much for coming back on here. We know the legacy of Rudy Giuliani. We know about it in New York City, but now New York has seen an increase in crime. You've heard him say more shootings, looting, riots, robberies. What needs to happen, Bill? I know you talked about wanting to return to broken windows policing, possibly going back to stop and frisk tactics. What needs to happen in New York City?
What needs to happen is exactly what Mayor Giuliani did in the mid-90s. Public safety, law enforcement, it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's using what has historically been successful. And the two things you mentioned right there, the broken windows theory of policing absolutely worked in New York City in the mid-90s. It drove down crime, it boosted tourism, we had an economic boom, but most of all, people felt safe in their homes and on the streets. We need to return to that. As far as stop and question, that is an essential tool that all law enforcement needs, but it has to be used fairly. We got away from that a little bit in the 90s. It became numbers driven. Under my administration, it will be used fairly. It will take guns off the street. It will take dangerous criminals off the street.
Well, that could be some possibilities for you. But again, another question would be, is it about leadership? Let me play this for you. I'll get your response.
All 5 of the top cities for homicides, like the top cities for rioting and looting, are governed by progressive Democrats, using the progressive Democrat approach to crime, which is to do nothing.
From Rudy's words there, he points to Democrat mayors, Democrat governors. Bill, do you feel that it sometimes does, or most of the time does, have to do with party lines?
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, we saw what happened nationwide. Just looking here at New York City, we had a mayor who sided with rioters and anarchists against his very own police department, against his very own business owners and residents. We had a governor who stated, while police officers were being assaulted and hit by cars and bricks, who said he was with the protesters. So it definitely comes down along party lines, and that's a shame because the only way we turn this around is to bring the two parties together. It's not about Republican or Democrat. It's got to be about everyone working together to fix New York City.
Scott Walker governed Wisconsin. I'd love for you to weigh in on this topic as well, not just New York City, but how we see a spike in crime across many cities. And I think about Chicago most notably recently.
Well, is anyone shocked that when you have an attack on law enforcement, the good men and women who protect us every single day, when they talk about defunding the police, not reforming the police, we need to defend the police, and we see it. You said New York City, Chicago, Portland, you look at Seattle, you look at Kenosha and Madison, all places that suffered through riots this past year. I think, one, that's why crime is going up in those areas. When you tell people, when you tell criminals you don't value law enforcement, and somehow you're going to defund them, it shouldn't be any surprise that the criminals take note to that, particularly in New York State, where not only the cities had problems, but when they changed the bail system, they're releasing people, there's all sorts of problems there. I think there is going to be an electoral consequence. One of the new members of Congress from Staten Island ran for mayor the last time as a Republican. I think you see across the country, people standing for law and order are going to win their elections.
You know, Bobby, we saw last week Minneapolis council members propose shifting nearly $8 million from the police department. You see it, though, in other cities, defunding the police movement here, possibly adding, moving that money towards mental health program, et cetera. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's absolutely crazy. And my cousin, you know, he's exactly my age. He's a police detective in Chicago. And they're just stunned at the way things go. I mean, I believe, according to him, that Lightfoot was actually a prosecutor coming in. But they get that party label, as your guest, as Bill has said. And I'm just interested to know, you know, like, what happens with these people? That do they start against the police the whole time? Or is there something in the party structure, in the pay for play, or this network that gets them to change? Because we've seen this in all of these Democrat-run cities where they are total anti-police and pro-Antifa. They would rather side with these rioters and looters and vandals than stick up for law and order. And these are people that were prosecutors or involved in law enforcement. And so it's like, what needs to change in New York? Is it just the mayor? Is it police commissioner? What has to happen in order to get this to change?
10 seconds. Bill, answer that question for us.
It starts at the top. It starts at City Hall. The New York City Police Department needs to know there's a leader in City Hall who supports them and has their backs. That's the only way to stop this.
Bill Pepitone joining us live. Bill, thank you very much. Bobby, Scott, stick around. A lot more to cover.
Okay, friends, thanks so much for watching. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified. And here's a special video just for you so you can watch even more of the 13-minute news hour. And don't forget to check out GOPUSA.com for the best in conservative news and commentary. We'll see you next time.